everyone, and welcome to the Quitcast. My name is Becca. Today, we're talking about a sustainability concept that I'm going to call, for lack of a better term, writing what we want. And I want to clarify first before we jump in. What I don't mean is that this is going to be an entire podcast that is anti-right to market, because some of us want to write what the market wants. And if that is you, then that's fine. Not fine, good. If that's you, then that's good. But what happens a lot in author circles, especially when we get into circles where there's a lot of, I want to make money, I want to do this the right way, I want to be successful, we hear a lot of, well, then you have to write what the market wants, because that's the only way to be successful. And of course, if you know me, you know I say question the premise all the time. And I don't say it to be cute. I'm not saying it because I'm trying to be different from everybody else. I'm saying it because this is the truth about the world. The truth about the world is, especially about this market, is that everything is selling to someone. Everything is selling to someone, or everything has the capacity to sell to someone, if the execution is right for the people who want to read it. And what I mean by that is when we hear things like, well, I can't write complicated books because complicated books don't sell. And I say back, not true, because I could give you a list, including Colleen Hoover, who is literally the best-selling author that we're all talking about right now. Coho, because we have a nickname for her now, which amazing success, super talented, amazing. Books are complicated, right? In the best of ways, which I think is fun. Also, if complicated books, if what we're hearing is we'll write simple books, we hear simple sells, or the market wants simple, or whatever, from people who are writing simpler books or people who are not writing complicated books. And we think, oh, therefore that must mean the market as a unilateral whole doesn't want complicated books. And I need to say this, and I don't know how else to say it other than bluntly, but anyone who tells you they know what's selling is either lying to you or lying to themselves, because what is selling in reality is so vast and complicated. And we are only looking at a very tiny portion of what's actually selling when we're saying this is hot or this is selling, or we're only looking at what's trending, right? Like everybody's talking about how a couple of years ago, everybody was talking about how rom-com was selling. And yes, rom-coms absolutely were selling. Billionaires, when billionaires were big, were also big. But that is big is so relative when we're talking about, I want to make money selling books. I want to make money at this creative pursuit. That does not mean you have to write what is the top selling thing of all time for for the current moment. It does not mean that you have to write only what everyone says is selling. And this idea that somehow we can understand this very large, very complicated market. And I'll just give you one example. So there are authors, and there was one particular author at 20 Books a couple of years ago, at 20 Books conference a couple of years ago, who was talking about writing in niche markets and having a very, very small audience. Those were the words we were talking about, right? Because when you compare the audience of contemporary billionaire romance at the time to the audience of, I'm trying to remember if it was shifters or not, but I think it was just contemporary male romance. Yes, it is a smaller piece of the overall reading population, but it still is millions of readers. So this idea that somehow there is a mandate about what I have to write based on what is selling right now is such a ludicrous concept, in terms of like, if that's the only reason that I'm writing it is because this is what's selling, or if I'm ignoring my own intuition consistently because I'm telling myself this is what's selling, this is what's hot right now. Essentially, it's sort of like, if it's really popular to buy Gatorade, does that mean that Coca-Cola goes in the toilet? No, it doesn't. If it's really popular to buy smart water, does that mean Dasani stops selling? No, it doesn't. They're still making millions of dollars doing this because there are still millions of people, the 500,000,000 people who are in the English reading market. Like there's just so many. Anyway, I get a little carried away with this topic sometimes because it drives me crazy when we try to reduce the very, very complicated, complex market with a lot of things happening into here is the 5-step program that everyone needs to follow in order to be successful. And if you've heard me talk about archetypes before, one of the things we're going to do in the upcoming weeks is to talk about a particular continuum of archetypes, which is the right to market archetypes. And there are 4 different possibilities of how you might right to market. And one of those possibilities is watch the market, write what's trendy, write what's hot, write the big thing because you're going after that number one spot. And that differentiator between I want to be number one and I don't need to be number one, or I want to be the best at this, or I want to dominate, right? When we talk to the people that I call drafters, that desire or need to be doing the thing better than other people are doing it, or to be riding the wave, or taking the risk of being that wave rider, right? That is a very different personality from most of us, and I say over half of the writing population is not drafting, like they're not drafters. So what that means then is we're all trying to write to market based on a very specific type of person, when in reality there are at least 3 other ways, and potentially more, because of course as we talk about this more and more, and I see more and more of the nuances coming out in this archetype theory, then I recognize that the complications of human behavior means that we are actually all so different. You can't predict on any level that the person you're talking to is a person who will know how to write in that very aggressive, market trend driven, hot niche kind of thing, right? Or big. You never know if the person that you're talking to is capable of making themselves fit into this very specific drafting, where you're following what is hot and you're trying to get into the draft of those people, and you're aggressive about that, right? Like you have that desire to dominate and that desire to make money. It is such a different orientation from the way that most of us are wired in terms of, do I want to make money? Of course. Do I want to do this for a living? Of course. But I'm actually not aligned to think about my career in that way. Like I'm not actually aligned to change the way that I'm thinking or acting only based on the possibility of being able to make money. I may have a fear that's driving me to do that, but that's not actually where my best alignment is at. So if you think about this idea of this is what's selling, or this is what's hot right now, and we are telling people you shouldn't write complicated when their best work might be complicated, or we're telling people you shouldn't write simple when their best work might be simple, or we're trying to make people write short or long books based on how much money you can make off of a particular length of book, as opposed to this is the type of story that I need to tell, or this is the type of story that's in me to tell, and I want to tell this. And again, the reason I want to talk about this in a sustainability direction first, before we get into the archetypes, is because when I try to do something that isn't in me to do, when we talked on the Claire Taylor episode about playing the right game, right? Am I playing the right game for how I'm wired? If I keep trying to play by different rules all the time, I'm going to keep failing at it. And if I play by the correct rules, I am more likely to succeed. If I know the game I'm playing, I'm capable of playing that game and I play it to my best, I am more likely to have success in that alignment than I am trying to play somebody else's game. But so many of us have assimilated this concept that I need to write what's hot or need to write what is selling, or I somehow can't write what I'm writing or what I want to write because what I've done in the past hasn't sold, or because someone has told me, well, that's not selling. And I'm like, right, it's not selling bonkers. But that, again, this difference between I could potentially make $1 billion, which none of us are going to make anyway, or I could potentially make $2 million or $3 million on an individual book, which again, most of us aren't going to make anyway, versus could I actually maybe meet my own financial goals that I need to meet by writing what I want to write rather than what someone else tells me I should be writing. And so if we think about sustainability in a big picture and we ask ourselves, how am I making the choices about what I should be writing? Who is telling me what I should and shouldn't be writing? If it's only someone on stage at a conference, or if it's only someone who is not you or who doesn't understand you, and you're never questioning the premise of the advice that you're being given about what you should and shouldn't write, I just want you to question it right now. Just sit with this for a second. I've been told in the past various things. And of course, my particular personality, I'm like, well, who cares what you think? But also, like, I've been told in the past, you can't write that. Don't write that. It's not selling. No one wants to read that. And I'm like, you don't know that, first of all. Like, you don't know. No one knows. In fact, who could have predicted that milking the Minotaur would become a big thing? Who could have predicted, like, so many of these trends that we see selling, because this is the nature of both trailblazing and drafting, is the trailblazers blaze the trail and the drafters draw attention to the blaze trail, right? So many of us were unaware that this was going to be a big thing. And then all of a sudden we see the trend coming up, and then everybody starts saying, yes, this is a big thing, or it's going to be a big thing. And then we all start flocking over to try to write the big thing instead of pausing, asking ourselves, what do I want to write? What is my best book? What am I both either lit up and excited about writing, which again, I'll talk about why some of us might be lit up and excited about drafting, about writing to market or writing to trend. And that's good. I keep saying that's okay because I'm assuming most of the people who are doing that already know that it's okay to do that or good to do that. But if I am naturally going against my instincts all the time because someone has told me this is how I should do it, I just want us to question the premise. So here's why I think it's important to talk about the idea of this is selling right now, or this is what everyone wants. First thing we have to question the premise of is TikTok trends. It is so important to know that when you hear TikTokers talking about something on TikTok and you're primarily only seeing videos about it, but you're not seeing sales of books that are like this, it is clout chasing when the only reason that the conversation is being had is to get people to make more content and to get us to watch more content and to get us fired up about a particular discussion. When you're not actually seeing that there is a followed outcome where, and I'll just use the example of the third act breakup. Are you seeing books that have third act breakups lose sales? Are you seeing people who are executing third act breakups well stop selling? Are you seeing the downtrend of that happen? If you are not, if it is not being reflected in sales, or the discussion didn't come up because someone noticed that the sales had been dropping and then someone was trying to explain why the sales dropped, then it might be clout chasing. And clout chasing is not a bad thing. It's just, we don't want to build our business model around a trend that may have come up because we're all looking for things to produce content about if we're making content. And especially because once a discussion starts, then the discussion itself has a trajectory and has fuel, and it becomes part of the actual, like, ether discussion, specifically because someone brought it up and everybody has an opinion about it. Does that necessarily mean that people's opinions and what they state are going to be followed by their dollars or their pocketbooks? That's the question. And so we have to constantly be QTPing this idea of, I'm going to let Instagram, Facebook, TikTok tell me exactly what I need to be writing, because somehow there's going to be a change in my sales if I write third act breakups and I'm not supposed to be writing them. So anyway, that's just one particular example. I think it is the most salient because I hear this the most often. I hear people referring to things that they have heard on TikTok where someone will say, well, this isn't selling because this huge TikTok trend is happening in the opposite direction. And I'm like, there's such a huge difference between I want to and need to sell 1 million books, and therefore I need to be worrying about the trends, or I need to be worrying about what's hot, versus will I be able to sell and or find an audience for and or build an audience for this thing that I want to write. So anyway, let me talk about a couple of the different ways that you can write what you want to write and still, and why it's so important for sustainability. Some of us want to write to market and or want to write to trend, and those are different things. Writing to trend is very much the what's hot, but writing to market is an arbitrary set of rules that someone has defined, and not any one person, but you, because usually it gets repeated and repeated, that someone has defined as this is what this genre is. And there's some veracity to those rules, but there's some nebulous edges of those rules where we'll talk about, and you've heard me talk about things like this before, right? Like female alphas in shifter romance, in male female shifter romance. So if there is a very clear lack of success in a particular trope, then it is not today's trope. That doesn't mean it won't ever be any day's trope in the future. It's just, it's not today's trope. Somebody may write an incredible female alpha series and make it just bonkers sell. And if you do that, please message me because I want to read it. But if that is not currently selling, that's what we're using to define the market, right? Is like what appear to be the boundaries around what readers want. The problem with that is, like everything, is that boundaries are statistically relevant only in a nebulous sense. So if we say the boundaries around shifter romance are this, then what we're actually talking about is there's this edge on either side that are not falling into line with what is in the center of the boundary of the market. And there are always examples of people who are doing things that are outside of genre expectations, and that are also selling. Yes, there are a lot of examples of things that are inside that are selling, yes, but there are also plenty of examples of things that don't fit the market that sell, and we ignore them when we talk only about writing to market. But when you are wired to want to please this majority of readers, let's just say 68%, because that's, anyway. So when you are wired to want to please that internal set of readers, please feel free to do that. That is your best work. When you are wired to not like that middle of the genre and you want to write something that's just a little bit outside, but you still want to sell, then the question is, am I willing to take the chance to do something that is with my instincts, thinking that if I do it to the best of my ability in the way that I want to do it, in my own intuitive sense, and what I love about story and how I make things compelling, that I'm taking a chance in being outside of that 68% on one side or the other, and being able to find the right people to market to. Is it a chance? Sure. Everything's a chance, though. Writing to the middle of the market is a chance just as much. There are just as many people who are writing to the middle of the market and not selling as there are people who are writing whatever they want and not selling. And I think it's so important to know that there is no expectation, there is no promise of how you would do this particular set of writing expectations. There is no promise that you're going to do it the right way and you're going to sell. Because again, there are so many. Yeah, anyway, I'm going to stop because I've talked about that in the past. But so this particular type of people who wants to write to sort of the middle of that genre, that I want to write inside of the boundaries of the tropes, excellent. Do that thing. That's your best work. And then those of us who are going to write, maybe let's say, kind of what the genre wants, like there are things we like enough about the genre that we do know we want to write inside that box, but we'd rather be on the edge of the box than like write directly inside of the box. And I think, again, I think that's important and valid to do. So if I'm going to be that person, and I know about myself, I have never been the kind of person who writes directly inside of the box. I've never appreciated that. I don't want to be that person. Then we have to start questioning the premise of people who are telling us to do that, because the bottom line is there is no proven 10-step process for how to make books sell. It is different for each person. And we have to be willing to take the chance that what we want has other people out there. And again, some of us are farther outside of the genre boxes than others, and we'll talk about that also in a second. But I just think it's important to talk about, even in writing to market, there are still kind of two different versions of writing to market, and those are both valid. When you talk about writing to trend, which is much more of like a drafter thing, and we'll talk more about drafters in some of our next videos. This is I need to look at what's super hot right now. I need to look at what's trending. I really want to hit the top of the charts. I want to dominate. And I'm willing to take a risk in order to do that, because I think that I can read this thing in the market that is going to be the next big thing, or somebody else is doing this, but I think I could do it better, right? There are kind of a few different things that drafters say to themselves. But that drafter desire to want to be a leader, or want to dominate, or want to make the most or do the best is a good desire. And when you are wired that way, a lot of the I just want to write what I want to write can feel sort of wishy-washy and annoying, because it feels like everyone should be thinking in this way. And part of the reason I do podcasts like this are to remind us that we're all so different and we need to not judge each other. And it's possible for me to be correct and for them to be correct at the same time. And so there's part of that. But also, those of us who do not like to write to trend or write to market also need to be cautious of how we speak judgmentally about people who do, as though somehow we're writing the true art and they're just following the cash. Because you can write true art in any form. You don't have to intend to write art for art's sake in order to do something that's beautiful and artistic and literary and worthy and all those things. It's still possible to do that regardless. But it's important for us to acknowledge where these things are and these feelings are coming from, so that we know how to make choices for ourselves. And then we have this combination of I can't write to other people's expectations, and I can't think about let's say, I can't think about other books, I can't copy other people, I can't write, like there's this sense of I'm going to write whatever I want to write. And that big kind of group is it has, there are several subcategories inside it, but I want to focus on the difference between I want to think about the market at all and I don't want to think about the market at all. Because right now, when I hear people say, well, that's not selling, so I can't write it, the first thing I'm looking for is, which one of these groups are you falling into? And we'll talk more about this when we talk about the archetypes. Which of those groups am I falling into? And then, is it actually producing the outcome that I want? Because the conversation we were having in one of our Facebook groups, because we have several, but the conversation we were having in one of our Facebook groups but the conversation we were having in one of our alumni Facebook groups which is, of which there are several, was I can't write this thing because this isn't what's selling. And I felt so compelled to say, hang on a second, though, what's selling is so broad and wide and wild. And none of us know for sure what's going to sell and what isn't. And I keep referring to this discussion in the Simon and Schuster trial about how Random House was named because publishing outcomes are random and no one can predict what's going to sell and what isn't going to sell, and that is actually accurate. Like, you can't predict 100% what is going to sell and what isn't. And there are so many good books that don't sell. There are so many good books that don't sell well. There's so many good books that don't get published because it's just random, and the audience is random, and anyway. And I don't say that to discourage anyone. I say that to say, when we don't follow our own intuition about what we should be writing, we are often kneecapping our success no matter what. So if the only thing we do in this discussion of which side of this fence am I on, and I don't mean to separate it like we're inimical, we're not inimical. It's just that there's a very big difference between I should be paying attention to the market because it's helping me write better books and it's helping me to sell, versus I should not really be paying attention to the market, other than maybe if I really like a certain trope, I might want to write a trope. Uh, but even then, sometimes that's not our best work. But I need to question this premise of I can't write this because it's not selling or it's not hot. The market is broad and wide, and you're more likely to be successful by doing what you know is good storytelling. Because the great thing about this, 500 million plus number, the great thing about this large market that we have is there are so many segments now and so many niches now, and there are so many places that have yet to be created, that there is much more possibility of selling things that are outside the norm than there whatever has been before. It's one of the great things about publishing. And it's also much easier to find niche down markets because we've also learned, if we really like something, we've learned how to talk about it with other people so that it becomes a thing. So I want us to just question the premise of I shouldn't be writing that because it's not selling, and really ask ourselves, is the way that I'm choosing what to write working for me? Because if it isn't working for me, it is not sustainable. It's not helping me to have a longer career. It's not helping me to be better in what I'm doing. And ultimately, it's going to cost me more energy pennies than it's going to get me because it is not aligned correctly for me. So I have to stop talking about this because I feel like I'll just go on for forever. But right now, my big desire is for us just to ask the question, who am I listening to about what I should and shouldn't be writing? And am I listening to the right people? Do those people actually know anything about me and about what's best for me? Or are they trying to get me to follow advice because we all think that this is the correct advice, that there's this unilateral statement about what's selling in lit RPG or what's selling in sci-fi or what's selling in romance or what's selling in mystery? The unilateral expectations that we have about the market are often so wrong. And the only time we can see it is in hindsight, when we recognize that it hasn't worked. So this Quitcast is going to be mostly for people who have been trying to do this the wrong way and need to acknowledge that they have to follow their intuition more, or for people who are feeling guilty about writing to market or writing to trend, because of course we talk about that a lot more now than we used to. And everyone is accusing them of being money first or of not doing this for the love of it or whatever it is that they're accusing people of. And we need to just be conscious of the fact that our differences matter and that we are okay being who we are in the arena of how we choose what to write, and that success is not predictive of tactics, are not predictive of success, and that tactics are not predictive of success. That is the most important thing ever. Alignment is predictive of success, not tactics. We have to be willing to do what's right for us and to ignore what everyone is saying. And I'll never forget this conversation that Warren Buffett had when someone was asking him in an interview about how he was able to make so much money when other people weren't making money. And he said, whenever I see something that everyone is doing, I do the opposite. So if everybody is selling Delta stock, I buy Delta stock. And if everybody is offloading this, I buy that. Or if everyone is buying this thing, I don't buy that. Right? Like this idea that somehow if someone is doing it and being successful, then if we all do it, we'll be as successful as they are. The reality is that is nothing but a promise that it's not going to work for most of us, for almost all of us. So if we can be more secure in our own alignment and knowing what's right for us, then we're more likely to be the person that creates success for ourselves. And again, I know that a lot of this is mindset stuff. Some of you are not super big fans of mindset stuff, and I get that. But I do think it's important for us to question the premise of what we believe is true about the world. Because there's only two places that behavior comes from: instinct and belief. We are either acting on a biological impulse or we are acting on some subconscious or conscious belief that we have about something being true. And if we don't question the premise of the beliefs that we hold that are incorrect, that are causing us to act, and we're believing things that are wrong about the world, then we are going to not have the kind of success that we want. Thank you all so much for being here. I hope that this has been helpful for you, and I hope that you have enjoyed this. We are going to talk a little bit more about the right to market archetypes and the sustainability archetypes in the next upcoming videos. Hopefully, fingers crossed that I can get those done. And I will see all of you in the future. Our conference, our digital conference, is also currently open. We are going to be discussing some of the archetypes in the digital conference. We have decided to split our conference into two segments. We're going to do an in-person conference that's very individualized, coaching development focused, et cetera, in Minnesota in October. And then we are going to do a digital conference that is much more, best practice, question the premise. It's sort of a combination of some personal development and mindset work, some strategic and tactical work. And then we're going to talk some about the archetypes as well, because everything we do is about alignment. You can find links for that in the show notes, and we will be talking a little bit more about that conference in the future. It is called Publish Better Faster, and I hope that you will all join us at the PBF conference. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I am excited about what we're going to talk about. Okay, I hope you have a great week. Happy writing. Bye, everybody.